got nothing to do and all day to do it.
That's right.
Yeah, basketball.
No. I got asked to do like scoring table again. Well, they fired us last year.
Okay.
Okay. Good morning. I would like to call to order a joint meeting of the Bethlehem IDA Governance Committee and Finance Committee. This meeting is being live streamed, so we welcome anybody who happens to be watching this morning. I'm David Cadera, the chair of the Governance Committee, and joining me is Dick Cotlow, chair of the Finance Committee, and our full board. So the first order of business is to call to order a roll call and a quorum approval. So I will call names of the members, see if we do have a quorum. Victoria Stores.
I'm here this morning. Thank you.
Dick Cotlow.
Here.
David Cadera here. Victor Franco.
Present.
And Ed DeBarberi.
Here.
Okay, we know that we do have a quorum for both meetings. First order of business is the introduction of new members, and I will turn the floor over to Victoria. That's what it says on the agenda.
Actually, it says minutes approval.
I have the same as David.
Oh, all right. So the email strikes again. So we don't have the governance committee meeting minutes yet from last time. So we're going to table that. We do have the finance committee meeting. So I think, Dick, what you should do is call your
Okay.
Okay.
Here, this is what I have.
Okay.
So now I think Victoria might want to just mention who's on the committees.
The governance committee is chaired by Dave Cadera. And in addition to Dave, we have Ted Barbieri and Dick Cotlow are members of the governance committee. The finance committee is chaired by Dick Cotlow, and the members are myself, Victoria Stores, and Victor Franco.
Okay.
I would also note, for those who are paying attention this morning, thank you for being here. I hope you're enjoying your coffee. The IDA has 2 open seats. Information about this is available from the town supervisor's office. You may have seen a notice published in the Spotlight. So if you've been with us and are interested in what the IDA does, we certainly urge you to get in touch with the town, learn more about our organization, and consider whether or not you want to submit an application. The town board makes the decisions. Thank you.
Okay, the minutes of the finance committee meeting that we had on July 1st, 2022 are attached to the agenda. In attendance was Victoria, Tim and Gina, and myself. And are there any questions, additions, or deletions to the minutes? Hearing none. We have a motion to approve.
I move to approve the minutes of the finance committee meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
These minutes are approved.
I just checked the email I sent out with the final agenda that, of course, the town emails, you may not have received it. So
I just want to make sure that you all have the next order of business was a review of the financials from Al. Okay, all right, just want to
But
make sure.
we're gonna do a little flip-flop, and David's gonna do the governance because he's under time pressure.
Okay.
Just in case we run late.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if I may, I misspoke. Victor is on governance, Ted is on finance, and I apologize for that. We made the appointments a little bit after last month's meeting, our regular meeting, which was quite busy and active.
But
Thank
Dennis, you're welcome to comment on finance committee matters.
Governance. Wait, so just.
Finance.
So,
No,
I'm
Victor.
finance, he's governance.
Yeah, Victor,
Great,
Victor,
great.
you're welcome to comment on finance committee matters.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Report of the committee, governance committee. We did meet, even though we don't have the minutes for that, we did meet back on, I guess, February 20th. And a couple of things came up. We do require, or the ABO requires, state law requires that all board members undergo a mandatory training program on basically their role as board members and the statutory requirements as laid out in state law governing IDAs and compliance with the Authorities Budget Act. We also, so I think both Ted and Victor, you will have to enroll, sign up for that. I think all of us have our own opinions as to the training program itself. And there is some, we've had some initial discussions, and I think you all saw the email. We couldn't pick a date. For some are doing our own in-house training to supplement that. I think there are a few things that the ABO training either glosses over or misses that I think are probably more relevant to some of the things that we do here that we want from our board members in terms of their involvement and understanding their ethical and fiduciary duties and responsibilities. So I know we are still, I guess, in the process of trying to figure out when.
Well, that's what we wanted to do today, that we have everyone together. Joe Scott and I do this for other clients as well. And we do find that it's better when you don't break it up because, you know, you'll come for 2 hours one time and cover some things, but then, you know, you're covering an entirely different topic the next time and there's no connection between, you know, governance and Joe's part really is he goes over the type of benefits that we offer, what to look for when you're reviewing the deals and, you know, so I had originally proposed that we do it all in one shot and it's usually about 4 to 5 hours if you do lunch or whatever you wind up doing. But, you know, if it doesn't work, then we'll have to split it up.
Yeah. Or so we're talking, the item of business is scheduling that meeting?
Yes.
Yeah. So just, I think my recollection is we propose Fridays. I just can't do Fridays really until December. I have some flexibility on other days. But that's just sort of my issue.
Okay.
Happy to do it in a single day. Will be hard to carve out, at least with respect to Fridays.
Okay. What are your thoughts?
Whether we do once or twice,
Yeah.
I'd rather do it once.
I think do it once.
One and done.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not familiar with the level of detail that your training goes into or Joe's. I think, you know, certainly 4 hours is a lot of time to spend on this.
Yeah.
So I don't think we necessarily have to think in terms of a full day.
Yeah.
But an 8 to 12 or something like that.
Yeah.
Or-
I'd be happy to do that. I'm recruiting for faculty candidates and most of my October and November is shot with that. Is my issue. So if Fridays work best for everyone, like like sometime later in November or early December would be the doable
Okay.
dates for me. And I'm happy to talk with Kate about getting some, just so we don't have to sort of get out calendars right now. I'm happy to work with you to get some potential dates to share with others.
I'm eminently flexible as long as I don't have to just work.
So you're talking about either like this, over your winter break or your Christmas break?
Yeah, just sort of later, November, towards the end of this November, early December. I can get, well, why don't I talk with you about getting some potential dates to share with others? Is that? what you think?
Yeah, my hope is we would get 2 new appointments and we'd only have to do this once. So
Yeah.
putting it off a little bit would be okay. I just know year end for Joe and I
Yeah.
is tough. But let's see if we can make it work. I'll connect with you and look at, even if it's right before Thanksgiving, early November, that might work. So we'll see. But it's important that we do it. Whenever I have new boards in particular, it's good to go over all of this, especially conflicts of interest and different things. And also, we're going to have a lot of deals coming before us. And, the first time I saw an IDA deal, it was all Greek to me, right? So I think it's important for learning what to review and getting comfortable with approving a pilot, and or other tax benefits when you're not generally familiar with what it means,
I can't. After Thanksgiving doesn't work for me.
Okay, yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It's going to be,
I'm in Cancun.
all right, well,
Well,
we'll talk.
if we're waiting for the town board to act, I mean, I don't know, when is our next deal? When do we anticipate a deal coming to us? What's in the pipeline?
I really don't know. It
Yeah.
could be a couple weeks because there's ongoing projects in the town that we're getting ready to
Yeah,
get an application for. So it is what it is. I mean, I think, well, what is your perspective as chair on the training?
I want to make sure that we do all get together. Part of the training is to get a better understanding of our role in the town and what we do and how we do it. So there's some strategy involved in there, not just satisfying, oh, do I know how things work on a daily basis? And it's important to get together for that. With regard to the time frame for a potential application coming in for our review, it may not, we may receive that before we can have the training. If that's the case, then I'm happy to do one-on-ones. I've certainly been through in and out of applications in the process from different perspectives over the years. So I've got more flexibility. That might work for you if you find yourself with a 45-minute time for a phone call. We can certainly do that. We can meet in person. Same for you, Victor. I would rather not do a quick and dirty training right now and then have to open it up again when we can all convene, hopefully with the members. We don't have news from the town board about their time frame.
I might be the only one who this is okay with, but I'm not averse to Saturday morning. Like I said, I might be the only one.
yeah, maybe. But, yeah, if it's after soccer season, then we're good,
Yeah.
right? But,
So is there any prohibition that this can't be done on a holiday? And just bear with me.
which one?
Any prohibition? All right, do you do your review on Veterans Day? Veterans Day is the 11th, it's a Friday.
Yeah.
You don't have your thing, there's no prohibition of doing it. Boom.
I think other than this building is closed, I assume.
Yeah, but we wouldn't be here anyway.
So maybe that's the
We
way.
want to do it on Veterans Day.
Versus a Saturday, I'm good idea.
It's a floating holiday for the state.
Well, then you'll
Isn't
just
it?
need to make a decision, if the new board members aren't on by then.
What's our turnaround time on a pilot once it's submitted?
These are all things we need to talk about.
Yeah, right, we need to, yeah.
Mhm.
So, I mean, generally, the general process is the application comes in. I review it, make sure it's complete. A lot of times there's issues with it. Then it'll go probably to executive committee. And then for recommendation to the full board, they'll come in. Sometimes they'll make a presentation. It just depends on what type of benefits they're looking for. So, you know, it takes at least 2 meetings to approve a pilot, at least. So I don't know at this point if even if an application were to come in tomorrow, the earliest that could probably be approved would be December, and probably not, you know.
Applications, frequently we want to go back and get more information, so we'll receive it. The first meeting will be that we deem it complete enough for us to begin our review process. The review process is 2 prongs, and this is up on our website. We often at the first meeting, if our questions are answered, we will authorize a public hearing to be held. And we would typically have the special meeting immediately after the public hearing, wherein we would make no decisions, but we would discuss it. Usually the applicant would still be with us for that meeting, so that is a very public forum. It is a very public discussion, and that's the method that we use, not only to satisfy the law, but to make sure that we are hearing from the businesses and residents in the town of Bethlehem. The next meeting after that public hearing would be the first one that we would potentially vote on approving the benefits. At the same time, we are reviewing the application. We are considering its impacts on the town, and we have to prepare a benefit cost analysis, which we haven't done since our software became unsupported. We had been using the Center for Governmental Research, had some prepackaged online software that we used, and all of those are available and they've all been done. We will be shifting to a different benefit cost analysis, and I particularly will be working with John Taylor, our senior economic developer, about the tools and processes, because we both have experience developing these analyses, but we'll make sure that the board understands what's going on and what's in it and can rely completely on John's work.
Right, so let's everybody sort of review their calendars, see what dates work. You may, the ABO does require, I think, that within, I don't know, 60 days or something like that.
They don't have
a date anymore.
Correct. It's not up on the website, so I keep checking to be able to tell you, you can sign up, but they don't have anything scheduled.
Yeah, I'm not even sure they're back in the office yet. So, all right, so we'll focus on getting something. I think the important thing is that there's this training, unlike what the state's training is, we'll really focus on what we do here and our own internal policies and procedures, as opposed to the broader role of board members in general governance. So why don't we look at that? We will schedule something when we can, whether it's Veterans Day or you all can march in the parade afterwards, I guess.
Or during break.
During break, okay. So we will work on setting up some kind of dates for a group thing on board training. Maybe by next week, I think put it on the agenda for next week where everybody can just get back to cater something with what schedule work for you, what open dates you might have. Okay, we also have a number of policy reviews that we have talked about. The governance committee, a new issue that Dick raised at our last meeting was to establish a formal credit card policy, something we did not have. And we talked about, who could sign, what we have certain limits, if we have one credit card, multiple credit cards, those kind of issues. So Dick, if you're prepared, I don't know if you can remember your.
I remember we really haven't done much since then.
We had a draft, I think that's some draft language. But it's, we'll open up to our new members if you have any.
My main issue was that Right now, we only have one, and the gal is the custodian of it. And if we want more than one, I felt that it was important that we have them in the name of the individual and the organization and not have a blanket Bethlehem IDA in multiple hands. So if Al has one, it would be Ellen Michaels Bethlehem IDA, Victoria Stores Bethlehem IDA, and we just go to Key and get them to issue cards in the name and also in the individual. So one statement, a statement comes for each card, goes to individual, they submit the reimbursement. I just don't like to have a card a statement where multiple people have cards and it comes on one statement. I think it's bad control. Other than that, that's really the recommendation. And
The reason this came up too was that I couldn't register myself in Victoria for some of the Empire State Development conferences and things. We had to go back to Al and Robin, and Al can easily pay for something. That's really not the issue, but he'd have to literally know all my information to register, and everything that we would want. And John Taylor, who works with us from the Economic Development Office, he's been doing a lot of work on the web, and you have to have subscriptions, so as far as he and I as staff, it was sort of creating this issue where, we really didn't have any authority to, what I would do is I would just put the money out and ask for reimbursement. And I hate doing that. It's,
so if you just give me, if you would, I'll gladly coordinate with Keys where we have it, and I'll talk to Key about getting multiple cards.
Yeah, right now, as I said, there's one card, Town of Bethlehem IDA, in my name.
If you give me the permission to speak to, I'll probably do it.
I think in the past, Robin, if we ordered something or paid for something, she had, the 16 magic numbers and the 3-digit and all that. But we weren't doing that much on it.
No.
It's just, one thing. So now we've got some activity on it.
But he would require a name on the card.
The keyword is still required. They want an entity name and then they want a person's name.
Yeah.
But you can have multiple people on that?
I don't know. Maybe they would allow us to have multiple people, but then we'd have one credit card, like they said, with a set of numbers that have 8 people using it.
Which I don't want to do.
they should be able, I've had at corporate cards before, they could do it by person with different numbers.
Right.
It's a matter of doing it.
Yeah.
I just,
Yeah.
and I'll gladly take care of it.
And then the internal control piece, and I do this anyway, for what I would use it for, I would usually copy the chair and the finance committee chair and say, I need expense approval for $1,000 for the conference or whatever. And then usually it's sort of that email approval, before I even do it. So it's really not discretionary, so much. It's just planned things we know we're going to have, at least at this point. I won't be taking anybody to lunch or,
And my policy I wrote really is that no personal charges. You're responsible for, if there are any, you're responsible for them, you got to get reimbursed, blah, blah, blah. I wrote it down, but let me coordinate with Key and see about multiple cards.
Okay.
And then we'll get
I can mark the policy up and we can, take a look at it
Yeah.
next time. Yeah.
What's it's Key Bank is, it's not their card though, is it? Some kind of. is it
It's a Key Bank
MasterCard?
MasterCard. Yeah,
MasterCard.
and,
So there's an annual fee?
no, this one's not a fee. We got it way back when we had all our accounts with Key.
Right.
So we look like a big fish to them. But then at some point, Key realized, hey, wait, they're not really the town of Bethlehem. They're a separate body politic. And then they started charging us rather usurious fees for just having a checking account. So
I can go back to,
that caused us, we moved to M&T, but I kept the credit card.
I can go back to Matthew at M&T. He was really receptive. I'm the fellow at M&T, got me all the stuff on the collateral.
Yeah.
I can go back to him. That's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I'll go to him. I'll ask him.
I think as a board, we probably need to decide the issue of one or multiple cards, whether everybody gets the card. How do you collect that card when we have turnover on the board, things like that. So There are a number of things I think ultimately, I personally, I don't feel like I need my own card. I think someone, there's just interesting. So whether we have, again, a couple of us have it, as opposed to all of us, things from an internal control, that's certainly an easier thing to track.
Well, I think for me, it made sense that I would have one and maybe John Taylor.
Yeah.
And that
He's
was really,
using my
Yeah,
card.
yeah. yeah,
The one card we have, and he keeps saying, hey, Al, I just went to whichever and put money on the, so I know in advance, and then when the bill comes in, I send everybody, Dick, I think, a copy of the bill, to say, here's the bill for this month. But yeah, it's a lot easier if you decide to sign up for a conference. It's one of those things where you want to sit down, sign up, get it done.
right. I
check
mean,
it
you're
off.
not my personal secretary, you know what I mean? So, it just takes that element out of it. But normally, even the last time before I spent my own money, you approved it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are certain conferences that we always send the executive director to. There are some that the chair goes to. So I would actually appreciate having a card subject to all of the internal controls.
Okay. So I think we can just relay some of those questions out.
Mhm.
Okay.
Another policy is document retention. I think some of us I've been on the board, I don't know, 7 years now, close to 7 years. We're surprised when we learned that, we're supposed to basically maintain every piece of paper. Things in the news these days in terms of what are government records and what are not, sort of reminded us that we are expected to retain all official correspondence as members. I think the question becomes how do we effectively do that, and whether or not having a copy of correspondence or agendas or all the rest centrally located in an IDA file somewhere on someone's computer or in town hall suffices, as opposed to individuals having to maintain all of that duplicate copies on their own personal computers. And so that's an issue that I think, again, you raised, Kate. And,
So in moving forward with the document retention and also the updating of the current website, John Taylor and I decided not to wait on the current website because there's an ABO inquiry about things that we're missing. So we have been updating the website. We're pretty close now. I just have to submit a formal response. What I found after receiving what was on the town server and after going through what was actually paper, old stuff upstairs, was that we probably didn't have everything we should have. I'll leave it at that. Since then, Joe Scott, what was important was the project documents. So Joe Scott, of course, has been the special counsel to the IDA for a decade at least, I would think. So he had what we really need to put on the website. So he and I were able to pull all the projects and update the website. Going forward, what my thought is, and what I'm doing right now, until the new website is ready, we were going to have new email addresses that would be Gmail addresses, but it would be Town of Bethlehem. And so because it's not going through the town server email, we're hoping you will actually receive it when I send one. And also there is some ability, as you may know, to share documents and things within the Gmail, suite. But I think the ultimate plan is once the new website is up, most of the documents for anything within a decade are all going to be there. So, should any of you need it, it's always there. Going forward, I have not only a memory stick that I pretty much uses the backup for everything. We scan just about anything that comes into me and I categorize it. At some point though, it would probably make sense, just in case there is a transition, whether it's staff or chair or whoever, that the board has access. So John Taylor and I are going to work on putting it in the cloud versus the backup on a memory stick. So that is coming. And, you know, I think going forward, most of it can be and should be electronic, unless there's a very specific reason to keep originals, you know. I probably won't do that because it's a lot of paper. But basically, it's anything that comes in is getting scanned and cataloged, including when Al even sends me bank statements and things. I know he's keeping it, but that's more of the financial piece of it versus, you know, our document retention. So I might tweak the policy a little bit. You know, we're starting in the context of your training and your, you know, education and sort of that strategic planning. You know, I think we're going to really have to go back and look at some of the policies have been stagnant for a while, years and years, and make sure that it's still pertinent. And when we get down further in the agenda, you know, there's some other things that we really need to redo because the ABO is asking us to post it now. So I'm going to go through and tweak the current document retention policy, and that'll come back to governance and to you as well with the credit card policy for that. That sort of leads into performance measures. One of the things that was pointed out is normally on the website, there'd be something posted for performance measures, but it was more of our annual report. It was more of accomplishments, right? And while that's good, we need to have that there. There is, and I did send it to you, ABO guidance on performance measures. And, you know, at some point, I think we need to work through actually filling out their attachment and the questions that, you know, they ask. And part of your training / educational piece, I know Victoria wanted to talk about what are the goals, you know, and even in some other IDAs lately, everybody seems to be revisiting, you know, are we going to do housing? Are we not? Are we going to do, what's our focus? Is it industrial or manufacturing or commercial, or is it all of them? So these are the type of things that have to be written down in these performance measures and placed on the, and adopted, and then placed on the website. And that was one of the items that the ABO, and I was surprised to find when I went online that they were right, that there's really not, this document isn't there. It's just a list of accomplishments. So that's not exactly what they're looking for. So, you know, I think while I'd like to have it done sooner than later, you know, I don't know whether it's appropriate to put on the full agenda and do it during a meeting, or, because if we're waiting till almost next year, I mean, this just will not get done. You know what I mean? And I don't know that I like that.
I agree with that, but I'm interested in hearing.
Sure, okay.
Wait till then to respond to the ABO letter, or at least make sure that we're compliant with what they.
Well, part of our compliance is to review, you're supposed to do an annual review of the authority's mission statement. If you'd like to leave it, that's fine. But then there's this performance measures, you know, what are our goals? Who has the power to appoint management of the authority? You know, there's different questions in there that we as a board have to discuss, put down an answer, and then adopt so that it can be posted on the website. So, you know, in my opinion, the sooner we comply, the happier I'll be, right? So, you know, I just don't know that I necessarily want to wait for a board training to talk about this. And that could be first quarter next year at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And then that would mean that this piece would not be in compliance. So
Like number two.
I can put it on the board agenda and you can discuss it next week. But I would encourage you to take a look at it this week, you know what I mean, and come up with some bullet points. I mean, I certainly can, you know, I'll have some things to add, but it's tough because performance goals is a pretty extensive discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, thoughts about having it on next week's meeting?
I see in the letter from the ABO, there's at least the authority performance measures were last adopted in 2010. That's what they're saying. Do we, I haven't looked at them, so I don't know if we have time to look at them before next week, but perhaps looking and seeing what they are, and if we like them, we can just adopt them and review. them
What they
subsequently.
are is a list of accomplishments.
Right, where you just started.
Yeah,
So we
yeah,
may not, I don't know, we may,
yeah. And that, you know, like, that's part of your annual report. We absolutely
Yeah.
do want that. But, you know, it goes to the larger discussion of, you know, if a housing project were to come before us, you know, is that,
we have a new comp plan, or we're getting a new comp plan. And I think, right, the board should review
that's exactly right, thank you.
the comp plan and make our performance measures consistent with the
Yeah.
process that the town went through. One would think,
Mhm.
I don't know that we're gonna, you know, we're not gonna do that before next week.
Well, I think what I'll do is I'll reach out to John Taylor because he's in planning. He
Yeah.
wasn't able to come today. He'll be here next week, I'm sure, at our meeting. And he's really the great connection to the comp plan because he has, you know, extensive knowledge on that. So I think that he definitely, and that's definitely part of the process. So let me connect with him and, you know, we'll take it from there. But,
So
you
there's
know.
nothing for us to do before the next board meeting.
Well, I think you certainly should look at the questions and think about it. And then, you know, we'll have a minor discussion and talk to John about, you know, what he thinks he probably could bullet point maybe 5 things, the major themes. And, you know, I'll see if can even bring that with him next week, if he has time to do it. So.
It'd be a great basis for discussion.
Yeah, I think one of the things you'll realize is we don't have, as a board, I think, a real good roadmap for even evaluating our own performance and our own objectives. And it's one of the things we're required to do in the personal, the self-evaluations board.
Yeah.
But how do we go about measuring our effectiveness? What is it that we really should be doing as a board? Other than, you know, meeting fiduciary duties and things like that, and maintaining some coordination with the town. But I don't think we really, it takes a while of serving on this board to sort of understand what it is you should be doing. And it's broader than just a sort of ministerial function, I think, in some ways. So having performance measures is sort of, now they're a lot of it is very hard to quantify. I think that's really the reason we only have these kind of goal or these accomplishments as our performance measure. Because how do you really measure? I mean, you can't have a tick-tock of every step you have to take along the way to do something. But it's worth, I think it is worth a discussion just to sort of figure out what we want to do as a board, how we want to operate, how we want to function, what we want to achieve during the course of the year. Whether it's recruiting new businesses, whether it's evaluating existing projects, all those kinds of things.
Some of the other IDAs have looked at, and this goes to sort of what I'm calling the governance audit. There is a document on the website that was produced years ago about process and what the process is for applying. And, you know, I think, and to the question that was asked today, you know, how long does it take to approve it? What is the, you know, I think if we were to take a look at that document and fine tune it a little bit, at the end of the year, it's really, and what this performance measures document is really getting at is, did you have a policy? Was it a good policy, and did you follow it? So you could quantify, yes, we had 3 pilot applications. They were approved within 90 days. Let's say that was the goal. Like, we want to be efficient. We want to, you know, get projects rolling. We don't want to drag things out. You know, those things are quantifiable. So I think to that extent, you know, at the end of the year, you can always go back and say, you know, what was the policy and did we follow it? And if, you know, the idea is to really put the message out there that we want to see more commercial development, then, you know, you would push commercial benefits. You know what I mean? So I think you can quantify it a little bit. I think that's what the ABO is looking for. So, that's just my initial thoughts on that. But I will follow up with John as the first step, and let's get the comprehensive plan bullet points, and we'll go from there.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, but this is the board, okay?
Yep.
So I just like to, again, if we don't need to have the same conversation at the board meeting, are there any substantive takeaways that we should bring with us? That's, because this is the board. I mean, it isn't any other people.
Right.
So how do we not have this same conversation? How do we have a productive conversation at the board meeting?
Well, I think then the discussion at this board meeting, if John can pull it off, is to give us an overview of the comp plan. And then the next time, we would have the actual policies and everything in front of us drafted to approve.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think today is just to raise the fact that there are issues that all of us need to get better informed about and to think about for more public discussion. Public comment policy, again, I don't think we have anything formally in writing, though obviously we're governed by open meetings laws and Zooming our meetings and live streaming our meetings and all that. So we have to allow, I think, some public comment. Now the question, I think, from my perspective is, especially given our meeting last month, is one, can you restrict public comment? And two, can you, in any form, so can you limit it to just items on the agenda, or do you have to open it up to anything that might be relevant to IDA business, past, present, or future? And how do we, without dragging these meetings out forever, since people have scheduling issues as it is, how do we comply with the public comment concept, but maintain some control and focus on that? Again, I'll turn it over to Kate, since I think this is something that you added to the agenda.
Yeah, so Victoria and I discussed, putting this on the agenda to have exactly this discussion. And I do have my legal opinions and my own opinions on it, but I don't want to stifle discussion. So I certainly think all of you should talk first and see what your thoughts are on it. Just in general, and the very basic premise is, when we approve benefits, we notice a public hearing. It's required by statute. That is the period that we take written and/or oral comments at the hearing. Sometimes we'll even hold it open and another week for written if somebody couldn't make it. That's been the practice. And that's pretty much it, because that's the proper platform for it, not necessarily a business meeting of the IDA. So that's just the legal parameters around it.
But even that the hearing is only required on projects over $100,000.
Yes.
So
Yes.
hopefully we have a budget.
Right, what's the application fee?
That's next on the agenda.
Do people have strong feelings about this?
Kate and I both work with multiple IDAs professionally, and my experience is that they are, depending on the organization, some of them allow public comment at every single meeting. You and I met online at a City of Hudson IDA meeting, and they do that. It makes the meetings sometimes 2.5 or 3 hours long. It's important for that community, and I applaud them for responding to their community's needs. Here in Bethlehem, we have not traditionally had people who want to come in and express views during our regular meetings, because we recently experienced that. I think that we should, at the very least, be really clear with the public about how to get in touch with us, how to express support, ask questions, express dismay, also give us some sense of what questions that come into us really belong with the town board. Because there are certain things that we might be asked about that we don't have any control over. And something to clarify that, yes, we are here, we're open, we want to hear from our residents and businesses, and to show them a path.
I think there should be adequate notice and timing for the public. The project in question was fast track, okay? Unfortunately, we're paying for the fast track, okay? But I do think that, you know, from my personal perspective, you know, we may have an objective of, you know, as we talked in the prior one, at 90 days, 30, but I think we should have enough time to really comprehend and understand the project and vet it among ourselves. And, you know, another month, in my perspective, doesn't mean anything on a project, okay? No, it's too bad. Yeah, that's why I look at it.
But from a public comment perspective, Kate, out there for you, can you legally restrict what the comments can be about? Can you say it has to be something on the current agenda, or that it has to be an existing project, or it has to be, I mean, can you just open it up to someone coming in and saying, my water bill's too high? So, you know,
So there's nothing in the statute that requires us to have a public comment period. Anything we do would be permissible.
Okay.
So if it's permissible to you, then you could limit it to what's on the agenda. That's what I'll stop there.
One of the things that I would recommend that we do is find out what the other boards are doing. For example, I believe that the planning board has had discussions about how they want to handle public comments and when. And so we can do that research, find out, make sure that our public comment complies with what the town board wants, because they appoint us, and we'll be funneling questions to them that are appropriately theirs, hopefully. And see if we can get ourselves in line with the other boards where it makes sense for the kinds of business that we do.
I was going to say they have much broader governmental responsibilities than we do.
Yep.
And so I think the issues that the public would be concerned about that we deal with are much narrower. And so other than obviously providing some kind of financial assistance to projects. So I think, you know, I think we should do that, but I think, you know, you'd find that we're going to be our policies are much more restrictive in some ways than some of these other boards are doing. But I guess, I mean, we are required to open up our meetings to the public, certainly for attendance purposes. And I guess then the threshold question becomes, are they given an opportunity to speak? And then on what?
We have a clear mission, right? All to the, like, putting our materials are on our website. If we have no authority, like, I don't have a problem saying to people in the audience, we have a clearly defined mission, which you just articulated. You know, we're sorry that you have an issue. It's just not with us. We can't do anything about it. But I guess, so one vote for, I don't have a problem with people saying something. We just, if we can't handle it, you should know that. And, you know, and I think that was an aberration experience. So I'm personally not worried about wasting in order, like, or getting significant public comment. I invite people to show up and care about what we do. It'd be nice to get.
No, I agree, but then again, then do you require them to sign up in advance, for example, to at least give us the topic so we can tell them, you know, the issue you want to discuss is not something that we have authority over, so take that up. Don't bother coming to our meeting for that purpose. You can come and observe and participate.
Yeah.
But you've got, you know, take that up with the appropriate governing authority.
Yeah, I mean, I've always taken the stance, because sometimes you'll get a FOIL request, but it's really, people want their questions answered. They're not asking for a document.
Right.
And really, we don't have to answer that, right? I think it's always a case by case of, there's no harm in answering it. We want the public to be informed as long as it's not long drawn out nonsense. That's always been my position on that. But and I've seen this recently, and I'm sure the students will see it, having been at a different IDA meeting last evening, and you're just starting to see it. You probably know where this is going. You have the planning board with their distinct authority, and they may approve a project. It may be popular or unpopular. Then the pressure comes on the project to the IDA because there's benefits attached to it. And so then the public, if they're displeased with the project or whatever the case may be, they come to the IDA and attempt to stop us from giving the benefits, right? And that really goes to, and I've even had board members on other IDAs say, well, we understand the planning board approved it, but we as a board don't believe that it's in the best interest of the municipality. So they deny benefits based upon that. And that's a slippery, that's a tough spot. And that's why it's important that we be aware of the comprehensive plan and what the goals are, and keep the communication open. And I think John Taylor, hopefully going forward, can kind of keep us abreast of, he does with me, on the phone, like this project's coming through planning, there might be an application, that sort of a thing. But there is lately this constant push and pull with two different boards, planning and IDA, with two different missions, but two different thoughts on a project, right? And conceivably, if, more than 4 people on the board, for whatever reason, don't want to do the benefits, you could kill a whole project that just took a year to get through planning, $1 million in studies, and then everybody's like, what's the matter with you, IDA, right? So, I think this is a large,
I mean, to that, like, if applicant, if they've got an issue, like, talk to us, educate, if there's significant neighbor opposition, which there's gonna be likely, which is what we're seeing in the issue in question.
right.
It just, to some extent, I mean, that's slightly different because that's, governmental agency, quasi-governmental, but like, I'm happy to have that conversation amongst the board about, what level of notice was given, or like, and I realize we have other agenda items. So,
Well, I think with this in particular and how we've handled it in the past, and what I got to catch up with John Taylor, but what I would hope is going forward, if we have a developer that's in the planning board phase and they want or think they're going to apply for benefits, other IDAs, we do this. They come and present to us, right? And then that meeting is open to the public. And while we wouldn't necessarily take public comment, at least the public is hearing the presentation to the IDA and why these benefits are needed, most of the time to meet financing requirements, right? And that in and of itself, at least we could point to, is we invited that project developer in. We personally heard about the project, and the planning board was the lead agency. Here's their seeker resolution. They looked at X, Y, and Z. That's how I'd like to do it going forward, so that there's something, right? But that's just a suggestion. It sounds like all of you like that, so that's great. But that's almost the best you can do. Do you know what I mean? Short of opening it up for, comments hours upon hours. Because really it's a problem. By the time they come to us, it's a problem with the project. And that's a planning board thing. If it's a problem with, a taxpayer, sort of, position, or the school district has a little bit of an issue because it's going to, take away some revenue, that's different. Those are our issues. You know what I mean? But it's not, we hate this project. That's not our issue. It's been approved by the town. Does this qualify for benefits? Is there a cost benefit analysis that the benefit outweighs the cost? That's it. So that's just my 2 cents on it, but.
Okay. Yeah, the composition committees, I think we pretty much just handle that this morning. And so the last issue that the governance committees, on the governance committee list here, is what's known as a discussion of a projects committee. This came up, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago. General discussion, whether we as a board should form a sort of I guess an executive committee or subset of the board or whatever to review projects along the way, whether they're or even current active projects. One of my sort of concerns that I've had for a number of years is, and I think you may be experiencing this in your early stages here, is sort of understanding what active projects are actually doing. How well are they? We can go back and look at the project application and how many jobs they're going to create and how much financial assistance they're going to see. And sort of once they're approved, we tend to sort of, at least I, as a board member, felt I lost track of what happened. They don't come in every year to reapply. They don't come in to provide status updates. So that's sort of for existing projects. And whether we should have play a much more active role, literally, in going out on site, not necessarily counting bodies, but to see whether or not they're still in active compliance with their original project application. It's time consuming, it's a lot of work, and the other reasons to do it or not do it. And then for new projects, again, when, I always felt that in some ways the board was playing catch up a lot because some of us are not necessarily going to town planning board meetings or town board meetings, not getting the calls from people. So you don't necessarily know what projects are in the pipeline, where they stand, and when it does come to us, I think we're under some, as Katie used to, you're under some pressure to approve it, and you're under some pressure to approve it within at that board meeting or the next board meeting, and you don't feel like you necessarily have sufficient time to ask questions or get a full understanding of the project. So I think there's some talk about forming a committee that powers and duties of which were not particularly defined or discussed in great detail, but whether that would help us stay more current, more involved, become more knowledgeable on current and potentially future projects, whether we should be out doing more recruiting with businesses, trying to solicit, not that we're necessarily looking to give away money if someone doesn't want it, but there are a lot of things that are going on in this town that don't necessarily require IDA assistance, but may qualify. And the question is, do we have any obligation to make people aware of that or not? Now we can't do retail, we can't do private housing, things like that. But what would, since to me, one of our primary responsibilities obviously is to evaluate projects and provide levels of financial assistance that may be required to encourage economic development in town. And are we well versed in those projects from start to finish, or do we sort of come in at the back end? And I think that's sort of not, well, I think a project committee might be very useful in doing, but other people have different thoughts. And again, we never really formulated a grand strategy for how this would work, or whether it'd be all of us as a committee, or whether it's us that would, whether it's, who would serve on it, who would want to serve on it, because it might be requiring a lot of work. But again, we raised them. I think our first discussion was January or February, March, something like that early on this year. And we haven't really progressed in our thinking or discussion since then. So now that we have in the process of having a major turnover in the board, 2 new members and 2 coming on board, I think now is an appropriate time to start thinking about, again, our role when we get engaged in projects, what our role should be. It goes back to training to me to some extent because we're an independent board. So I understand the mess that would be created if we happen to reject a project that the town board has spent a year looking at. It's still, that's our independent function. We have to be comfortable that should ever be the case. And we also have to be comfortable, I think, knowing as much as we can about the project before we approve it, and whether or not we need to talk to the school district or we need to, other players who may be affected by any kind of financial assistance that will be given, whether it impacts other businesses, whether we're showing competitive favoritism towards one business but not providing financial assistance to someone in that same business. There are all sorts of questions that people may have, and we just in the project committee, or at least a more aggressive review of projects by the board, active or potential, might be warranted.
There is a legal duty, and there is several IDAs that have been taken to task for not properly monitoring projects and documenting the same. I'm in the process of reviewing, because the website requires us to put the number of jobs in the application and then the number of current jobs. I went back and looked, I think it's ST60, right? The questionnaires we send out at the end of the
No,
year.
the ST60 is the sales tax.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's something. It's
Right.
I forget the name of the form, but I've been going back and looking and seeing, they said 60 jobs, where are they, right? And so that would definitely be a function. This sort of goes to a suggestion I had, but again, I'm cognizant of the time, you want me to spend on things, but how this really should work is that, I should be saying, here's the project in a nutshell. John Taylor can kind of provide that planning board perspective because that's his, area. Have it teed up and also report at every board meeting or maybe every other the status of the ongoing projects. So because the board definitely has a duty to oversee and monitor that, and it's staff's obligation to, sort of tee that all up for you. Things have been really busy since I've come on in January because of the number of huge projects we've had to do. That has taken up a lot of my time, but now I think I'm sort of, Dick is always saying, hey, and rightfully so, where's this project at? And, I want to be able to come to a board meeting and sort of give a quick report on all of that. So.
I think that I agree with the two of you that it's important to monitor existing projects. Okay, but I'm putting that aside because that's a given, right? It's part of our charge. But I had thought that the project committee was not like a overall committee. It would be specific to a project, so that if a project comes on board, one or two of us would assist Kate and Victoria in the specific project to be either a champion or one way or the other. And as we discussed, I think the worst thing we can do is come to a meeting and be against the town without really vetting it before we come to a meeting with the committee.
Or really vetting it before you approve it too.
Yeah. So so I looked at it as personally that we would be involved with a project, a committee would work as a subcommittee of the board on a specific project. And really, when we came to present it to the board, that committee would know all the issues and nuts and bolts of that specific project. And we've been working on it. And that's my thought of the project committee, which would be separate from the compliance of existing projects, which that's part of our charge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have to do that.
Right. So in terms of this, I think it just makes sense in order to, to kind of gauge where current projects are. The problem with that is that we have to then already automatically be set up for what happens if something's not compliant. I know that, yes, there's procedures probably already in place, clawbacks, what have you. But the increase, the potential increase of going after bad actors, or, is going to intensify potentially, and we need to be prepared for that. So as long as we're prepared, let's evaluate, let's, review. The other thing we have to be mindful of is this is a voluntary position. So hopefully we'll have strong staff support in order to tee things up and to be able to really dig in, so that we can use our limited time wisely, to not only do one side of the coin, which is the new projects coming in, but also the other side of the coin in terms of past projects that have been already.
To Victor's point about the volunteer position, this came up the first time the project committee was discussed, and we tossed it around a little bit without, coming to any real conclusion, which is the formality of the committee. Would it be as formal as, for example, the finance committee, where you have a chair, designated members, and take votes and all of that? Is this so that's one way of doing it, setting up an additional formal committee. Another idea that we didn't really consider at the time was, is there an existing committee who could take this on and perhaps meet a little bit more frequently, so that we weren't expanding the number of committees and therefore the number of distinct meetings? That's one potential option to address the time constraint. How do we get to be very thorough and on top of things while we are doing full-time jobs and families and all of the other IDA business? Another concept that we could think about is, what role would, planning, and specifically John Taylor, be available to do? What resources could planning share with us? Because in terms of researching a project, a lot of it really is planning. They're working with the developer, the applicant, on getting through the town. And we've certainly had a very good relationship and are working much closer. We were without a John for a couple of years, and so having him on board has really changed. So that's also something to consider. Would we want to make sure that the project committee was coordinating very clearly with planning for exchange of information? And if that's the case, then we want to make sure that planning does have the resources. And if they don't, then it becomes a question for us. Do we have a role in helping them get the resources so that this can be done?
So I like Dick's idea, because if we had a committee just for projects, that committee is going to be slammed, right? So his idea of, okay, we have projects A and B, 2 board members are on A, right? This is what you're saying.
Yeah.
2 board members are on B, and it's just the one project.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that sort of spreads it out, so you're not slammed with 5 or 6 projects, the committee itself, right?
That's,
So, yeah, no, I like that.
I have to
Okay.
apologize. Thank you for
Yeah.
letting me go first and turn over to you.
thank you. You're the best chair we got. This is the first 3 years.
Thanks, David.
Do you need to close the governance committee officially? As
Okay.
I'm genuinely asking.
I don't.
You're the
no,
chair.
but
That, you know.
I will adjourn the
Yeah.
governance committee at 9:48, 9:43. And see you all on next week. Turn and allow Dick to reopen the finance committee.
Thank you, sir. Have a good meeting.
Okay.
I have a 10 o'clock also, or, so,
We still have a quorum. Well, no, wait.
Finance, we have a quorum of finance.
Okay,
Victoria, me.
Mhm.
okay.
Thank you.
see everyone next week.
Yep, and we'll make sure that both of you are up to date on
Oh,
how we close out this morning.
okay, it would be nice if we could go through fees.
Mhm.
I guess we can't go through fees.
Yeah, I apologize, Dick.
Okay. No, don't apologize. I understand. All right. I've got 3 fees to discuss, but
Okay. We should. We need to
Yeah.
move forward.
Mhm.
We're gonna move forward, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good. With that, Helen, you want to go through financial?
Well, yeah, well, we have the financial report through the end of August. State of the net assets. Our cash account balance is $861,013.61. We have a fee receivable of $92,590.50 and prepaid expenses of $1206.68, giving us current assets and total assets of $954,810.79. Our liabilities, accrued expenses are $13,556.25. That's the portion of the half of the town fee the last couple months, and the prior month fee for our council. We paid the first 6 months to the town in June as per our agreement, so we'll pay them the second time in December. So our total liabilities are $13,556.25, leaving us with net assets of $941,254.54. How do we get there? Statement of revenue, our fee income was $591,008.54, broken up between project fees and the PSEG energy reimbursement fee, which is substantially higher than we anticipated, which is good. Contractual expenses are $85,366.26. Business and economic development, $4,000. Giving us total expenses of $89,366.26. Net ordinary income of $501,642.28, and a little bit of interest. And our net is $501,706.05. How does that compare to budget? Our fee income is $432,050.64 above budget. Year to date, our PSEG is $77,128.58 above budget. On the expense side, our contractual expenses are $66,5960 above budget. Business and economic development is $26,6668 above budget. So on our ordinary income side, or even net income, we budgeted, we hope, $1989.34. And in fact, we have $501,706.05, so we're $499,716.71 better than our budget. Obviously, the changes, they're just some large fees, which when the budget was made a year ago, we had no anticipation that we would be receiving them. And PSEG, the rising tide of energy usage and costs rises our fee. And any questions on the financial report?
I have a follow-up.
Yep.
Thank you, that was very good. You've done a good job this year.
Thank you. I've tried to keep us afloat.
I'd like to segue this conversation into our budget, which we're not really gonna set, but there's a few things that I know that, Victoria, you have ideas of things we should do as a board. And I'd just like to ask you, we don't have to do it right now, but to schedule them out so that when we have our budget meeting, which we should have shortly, we know the things, your wish list of things, and Kate too. You have some infrastructure things that we have to do so that we have them scheduled for when we do our budget.
Okay.
Okay. And that goes through contractual. I know, Al, I talked to you that you haven't really had an increase in many, many years. And I'd just like to know, what you would expect so that when we do the budget, if there is anything. And I don't know what our relationship is also with Joe, but if there's, I don't know if you ever look at your time versus what we do.
Joe Scott generally if he does specific legal work for us to answer a problem or policy things, his firm would bill us specific, and that's happened once or twice in the last decade. Otherwise, his work is compensated at closing, so he's paid a fee by the applicant.
Right.
So that money is never part of
Do
our.
we pay for his attendance in board meetings?
No, that's
No.
just something.
It's included. Usually, he'll come anyway, even if he doesn't have something on the agenda, just to sort of stay abreast of that. And, so I think, it's certainly worth just having a quick discussion with him about and just making sure. I will say, and I'll do on the next invoice a budget to actual too for executive director and agency counsel. And I've been very careful to stay within the confines, but based upon the amount of work, especially with the number of projects coming in, and then also the monitoring of those projects and all of that, I'd like to write up all of this, what needs to be done, and just project the time commitment so that what that is, because clearly it's going to be a larger role than I think traditionally we've had over the last.
If we're covered with your original budget, that's fine. But if there's some extended time because of that or plug, we should know if it's going to exceed before, you get burnt or we get some sort of a change. So we should get that budget and estimate.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'd like to do in the
Yeah.
context of because, what we've talked about today, even, and moving all of that forward, is going to add time as well. So.
Okay, that's in anticipation of the budget and also the year end. I think that was my personal objective, to get that on the table so that we can gather that information.
The CHP, that could close next week or next year. It seems to be one of those projects that just seems to, it's like a marathon, and every time you turn a corner, there's.
I thought it did close. The county closed it.
No, the county is not closing yet. I would know.
But we are asked to authorize the fee splitting agreement, and that's why
Yeah.
we asked for, and Kate circulated. It's really two sets of documents. I think the closing documents, but for us, we also obtained a full set of the review documents used by the county IDA in making their decision. And that includes project narrative, how it fits in with the state goals, and the project benefits that they expect will accrue into the communities.
So we can get those wish lists and identify those. We have to, what's our timing on the budget? We have to have it.
Well, we have to have a budget adopted and posted onto the Paris website by October 31st.
Okay, so we're on.
We're on
Oh,
track.
certainly,
Yeah.
right. I mean, it's, this would be a good year to budget because there's not, how do we cut? What do we, we're comfortable, I think, in terms of, like you said, wish lists and making sure that we're doing what we need to do. So
Yeah.
We have to have this approved at the October board meeting.
at the latest, yes, there are some entities that do it actually by their September.
Well, we can't.
No,
That's next week.
they're called the early birds. They're very few and far between.
Okay, so we need to have this within the next 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
And there's things that are wild cards, like phase 2 of Plug Power is postponed, but there will be a phase 2.
Right.
So
But
that's next year.
that's next year. And like when I do the budget, the preliminary proposals, most of our costs are relatively known and fixed. Within what the council fee, what we pay the town for services, my fee, the memberships, so we have those things. And then, like I said, there's wild cards. If there's things we need to spend or want to spend, we certainly would do it. But for income, we know what income we're going to collect for projects
Is that even
on the schedule.
This was great.
Well, that's something Tom and I did when Vista first happened. So we kind of know, and then I always have the wild card that we're gonna do one project every year for $3,333,333, and the fee for that is X, and we never had a $3,333,000. But we've had projects right around that, we've had some larger, we haven't had some, so. But I just, I never count on shared projects with other entities happening,
Right.
because we can't control it. We have absolutely no control. The town has no control. So I just try to budget based on what we know we're supposed to get, what we hope we get in terms of one project. And then I've always looked at these other things as wild cards.
But the other thing is that we need a 4-year for the,
Well, we have to go out, which is, I won't say, it's interesting because I don't know anybody that can go out 4 years on their income and expenses that unless they're fully retired and they're living very small. But we have to at least give an idea. So I've always figured that every year we're gonna do one project for 330, whatever, 3 million plus. Our fee income, we know what our other fee income is kind of supposed to be based on. And then our expenses are been always pretty much within a certain constant. Our audit fee is this, so. Our budgets are actually pretty close to reality in most cases. But
we had an issue 2 years ago because of the rates went down. Utility rates were low.
oh yeah, that was
And so you can't expect that.
and 1 year. Well,
Yeah.
1 year we got a little happy. We thought, oh, the PSEG is gonna do this, and no, it didn't. And so that's why the PSEG is always, the last few years, has been a pretty comfortable number, and this year they exceeded it.
Okay, so we'll have to get that information within the next few weeks. So, I guess Victoria and Kate, you guys have to know where we're gonna go for those extra,
Mhm.
wish
Oh, yeah,
list items.
this is the year. And we know we need to do certain things. We're updating the website. We need to certain, this is the
Yep.
time.
Mhm.
Okay.
So that's our
Yeah.
fee schedule.
Yes, and the PSEG is going to go away within that 4-year timeframe
Right,
that
that's
you're
it.
projecting.
Yeah.
And that's probably the most important thing to have on there. And Dick, I know you've been following this as well at prior finance committee meetings.
Well, the other, this is not necessarily our direct concern, but I have to assume the town is working on the whole end of the PSEG pilot there, because,
Well, it's the school district really that's got.
well, they're both
Town is small.
key players.
The county and town is
You
small.
know, it's a wonderful project down there. They got a tour of it a few years ago. It's mind-boggling. So,
We told them, we've let the school district know and
Oh, yeah,
so it's nothing we can do about it.
Right, I'm sure it's on their radar.
Hope so.
I know because Mike Cohen here on part of the town has mentioned
yeah.
that he's planning for it.
He's
And
on
I
top
have
of it.
no doubt that Judy Kehoe was doing it, and I'm sure her successor is at the school district. To my mind, when you talk about a wish list, the information that we'll start getting you will be taking a look at really the professional activity
Mhm.
that we've done today, making sure that our budget going forward reflects our more active status. Is that what you're thinking about?
Yeah, I know you've mentioned before certain objectives and things that
Mhm.
you want to do
Mhm.
as chair, which are fine. And we just should, it's a lot better to get those that are known on the budget.
Yep.
So we limit those that are not known.
Mm-hmm. Sure,
And a lot of things happened this year, which we could never have figured last year,
that's right.
okay?
Meetings are back in person now, so.
Yeah.
Where for a few years, nobody was going in person meetings.
I
Now,
mean, we have to do that now. I mean, just,
Mhm.
because we don't. Fee schedule, we go into that now,
Yes, sir.
Yes.
right? There's a few fee schedule items that I know of, and the one was the application fee. Second was the fee for if someone wants to refinance or do
Yes,
something different.
yes.
And the third fee, I'm having I mentioned it to you the other day. This was, well, I'll think of it in a second unless you. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. The third item was I'd like to have codes that we don't bill in arrears, we bill in advance. So that from now on, when we do a project, that the administrative fee will be billed in advance, not in arrears. I don't see why we should bill in arrears. And that's for discussion. So those are the three that I know of. I mean,
Well, you say the closing fee or the
no, we have to close, at the closing, we get the closing fee and the administrative fee for the next year
oh, all right, yeah, that we never know. We just always,
in arrears.
well, at the beginning, in other words, we close air products in May of whatever. So we get our administrative, and then January of the next year, we bill the administrative fee that begins for that year, because usually the fee starts.
Well, the administration is for the period of the pilot.
Right, which
Pilots
starts
at the
usually-
closing.
Well, no, they don't, they become effective, but they usually don't start because the tax bills are only sent out in January and the school.
Well, we have a responsibility for the reporting of the project in the Paris report.
Right, in the first year, there's never a pilot because they just closed. So that when we put in new project A, in the year of the closing, the pilot starts the next year usually. One of the
Right,
pilots
there's
did-
1 to 2 year construction period.
Right, one of the pilots didn't start for a couple of years. So, when the Paris reported, there was no pilot in year one, and now the thing's all completed. And then Mike Cohen and everybody that's assessed the pilot, the number, then we start the Paris reporting. In the meantime, the first year of the construction, for example, we've collected a fee for that year. But we always bill, whatever the project agreement time is. We got our closing fee in the year of closing, and then January 2nd, I mail out the bills for the administrative fees for the next coming year. And they go on unless you see the projects.
Okay.
So they end then. So we're not, if we're behind, we're not behind more than a few minutes.
Okay, I guess maybe I got hung up with the port.
Yeah.
Because the port is a
Tax exempt.
and it's specifically a time over.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, and I just mentioned it, that I'm not, I could go either way on arrears or advance, but I just hate to have a year drop off.
The fees we charge going forward on the projects are relatively, I don't want to downplay it because the collective, but they're relatively minuscule.
But the port is big.
Well, the port, that's a negotiation of the total project. If we could measure how you would bill a fee on the port, if we got our normal fee, it would be one big size of this room. But it's not really the nature of the thing. So that was a negotiated fee. The time payments were negotiated.
All right, those were the three, but I think that maybe from my personal, the application fee is more important than the others.
All right, well, let's take this one at a time. So and this all goes to our process, procedure, and this came up in another IDA last night. I could see a fee advance or at least a fee assessed for that construction period before you get to the pilot, because the issue is there's no incentive for the developer to move the project along, and they could delay it, like Burt Crane, for instance.
Mhm.
And the pilot, it was supposed to start, in year 3, but now construction was pushed back 24 months. So now you're out, the pilot doesn't start for 4 years. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
So you got to hold their feet to the fire, and I
Right.
think that's a policy, and it's also a
Mhm.
fee. Yeah.
It's
That was, my original.
Not them in particular, but I'm
Right.
just
Yeah.
saying that that's the whole point of front-loading fees, especially an application fee, which we'll talk about too.
Yeah.
So I would not, my first choice for creating a financial incentive for the developer to move forward quickly. And that part of that means coming to us when the project is really genuinely ready, and that's something we'll deal with over time. The annual fee is, that's at 5 basis points. That's not really enough dollars to make a developer, negotiate a, $500,000, $2 million contract. I don't think that's enough dollars. What at least one IDA that I know of does to make sure that the developer doesn't sit on an approved project for years is have the pilot terminate at X years, from the point of approval. There's
It's
a
in the-
built-in
In
construction,
the documents.
and if you don't get it done, so if you take 5 years to build it, then your pilot is, 10 years instead of 15. So there's an end. And that's an incentive to get it built. And then, for example, if there is, another kind of disruption, the board would have the option to say, we will extend these benefits because it wasn't your fault that X industry, there was no supply of what you needed. So if there's externalities, so that's something to consider to make sure that these things get built as a policy rather than using a fee.
Okay, but that's fine. But I still like my proposal where we up front get a deposit.
Mhm.
Okay, where, the project puts a application fee and a non-refundable, or if we approve a project, it gets hard. I mentioned that before, so that, they're at risk for some money, whether I said 10,000, I don't think it should be less than 10,000. I mean, if someone's gonna do even if your small $3 million project, if they can't come up with a deposit, there's a lot of money that they have to shell, they would incur to do even a $3 million project. They have site costs, they have architecturals, a lot of soft costs that would be, and, quite frankly, I don't think that the IDA should spend the time that they have to spend to approve a project and then have it been sit on. So I think there should be some sort of a upfront deposit that is hard, and if they don't close, they forfeit.
So one thing that we might think about, and again, this is because you and I have had some conversations, and with Kate, the $500 application fee, which is before we even open up your application, you have to give us this. That's actually not an uncommon level in the state. I do support the idea of not going through a whole project review and then have it go completely away. So what would you think about having a fee due, like we'll call it inducement, when we accept the application and said, yes, we will begin our review process. And then the fee is due then, so that if we look at an application and say, no, we do not do single family housing, they're not paying us $10,000 to say that.
If we don't approve it, I wouldn't.
Yep.
If we approve it, that's when the clock starts.
Yeah,
If
we're
we
gonna
don't-
move forward.
If
Yeah.
we don't approve a project, I don't think that,
Mhm.
I don't think we should get anything but the initial application fee.
So what are your thoughts about getting, we'll call it a review fee, prior to our review, as we begin it, so that we don't end up having to wait until closing if there's a closing?
I think that's what Dick's saying,
Yeah.
is the 10 grand is right?
Yeah, I mean, the 10
Or
grand.
whatever
is
that
a-
number
But
is.
okay, my feeling has always been the 10 grand comes, it gets reduced from our, whatever our fee is for the deal. Okay, so what is it, half a point?
Mhm.
What? What's our fee?
So it's like a down payment at closing, it comes off the proceeds.
Yeah,
Okay.
but the thing is, it says, okay, but if we don't close, we get to keep it.
Mhm.
But if we don't approve, you get it back.
Right.
Like a bid deposit.
So if we don't accept the application, or if we conduct a review and don't approve,
I think we conduct a review and don't approve.
and they get back the $10,000.
Yeah, if we don't approve, they shouldn't.
But how do you cover my time on both fronts?
Well, right now, we don't do that, okay? I wasn't gonna, okay, in my mind, okay, I didn't want to do something punitive. I don't have,
Right.
you can easily convince me that we should have a larger application fee or timing. Okay, I didn't want to go off the norm, okay? I just wanted to make a commitment that if we go forward, we've incurred the time and we want to get paid. And whether it's 10,000 or 20,000, I don't have an issue with either one, okay? But I have an issue with $500. We go forward, we have a public meeting, we have a hearing, we approve it, and then they don't close. Okay, I have a real problem with that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's the same, I guess, to my point is, the minute we start reviewing it,
Mhm.
it's staff time, period.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think in keeping with what I've heard you say in the last couple meetings
Mhm.
too, when you can cover staff and attorney time by an applicant, you should. So I don't think you should give back. It's whatever time, is billed against that fee. Like, we have to keep that because it's review time. Especially with a big project, that could take me 20 hours just to get it to where you were gonna say yes or no,
I have no problems.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just wanted to.
I'm just
get
trying
more-
to cover you, that's all.
Okay, I have no problems with that. I didn't want to go, the question, Tim, what do other IDAs do? Okay, I don't have an issue with that. I just wanted to make sure personally that when someone submits an application,
Mhm.
we have more than $500 to keep the
Right.
people divided.
Okay,
So one option, based on what I see other IDAs doing right now, is to raise the application fee to $10,000. Or, 10,500, but not charge that 10,000 unless we agree to begin the review.
So we do what?
Unless we agree to review it. So the first step is we receive an application, and that can be $500. And if we do a preliminary review, determine that the project qualifies for benefits, that it's reasonably likely to be built, that they have sent us at least most of the information that we need and are likely to give us the rest, then when we take the formal vote to accept the application and open our process, then we could send them a bill for the 10,000 and say, okay,
I'm happy.
and
with
now
that.
you're going to pay us this, it's our administrative and review fee. And that includes the effort that goes into the required benefit cost analysis.
I'm more the merrier, the more the better.
okay.
Okay,
all right.
I'm happy with that.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm just taking notes because
Yeah.
what I'll do is kind of write it up, what you said. And then we would need to amend the fees policy at some
Yep.
point too.
and that would be the full board I would want.
Mhm.
So for next week, if we can get something that says this is what we're proposing as an amended fee schedule.
Yeah.
And
It's a lot of
why.
work.
It is.
Okay, I'm happy.
Okay, then we have the miscellaneous transaction fees, like the splitters, the refis. Joe Scott is pretty good in kind of giving us an idea of basic charges. And I certainly could circle with him, but usually for the splitters in particular, there's a little more work to that than there is like a refi. So I think this past one, we had gotten, $7,500? for the splitter, and then one of the refis were lower. Those were more like
Mhm.
$2,500.
We got 7,500 for this one?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, I wasn't aware that's good.
Yeah, that's the one they wired out, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And then plus Joe Scott got his fee.
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
That's-
And they paid my legal fees on the review of it.
okay.
So I've been taking care of it, even though we don't have a policy yet.
I'm happy with that.
Okay,
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, and Kate has, we've had discussions about, does this feel right? Joe's provided information about what other IDAs are doing.
I was really concerned, I still am, and we didn't really, was when ShopRite did what they did. You know, we really undercharged, and we really didn't do, we have no idea who all those people were
Yeah.
that became involved with the project. You know, it was like presented to us as a fait accompli. And I think there should have been more vetting.
So
Okay.
I don't know if you were even involved with that, but they.
I was the only one, the only other one.
I was-
Well, Dave was.
Yeah.
You were here, so Dave was here.
But it was presented to us, and we had this org chart of, you know, all these, it was in the state plan, but we have all these people that all of a sudden became
Mhm.
part of the project that we had no idea who they
Yep.
were.
I think when we have changes of ownership, refinancing with the bank is one thing. And that's pretty straightforward. I think equipment came in and asked for that. That did not change our relationship to the project or the project owner.
Mhm.
The ShopRite did, the other splitter agreements do. There is more due diligence involved there. You're absolutely right. And in addition to board effort, which the agency should be reimbursed for, there's the time frame.
There's
These
risk.
things, there's risk, and the time frame in which we are asked to review these.
Mhm.
And no patch on Joe Scott, he gets the things in front of us as soon as humanly possible.
But yes, it's sort of that, hot potato, we want to close Friday. It's when, I mean.
We want to do something for state planning, and they give us stuff on December 15th. Well,
Yes.
that's not my problem.
Right,
Yeah.
and we do the best we can, but, and it's a good thing. I might even be tied up doing something else for you. You know what I mean? That I can't even get to it in 2 days.
Yep.
So, we work through that, but, all right. So I have some, other than the splitters and the refis, I'm trying to think what other possible
Well,
transactions.
the other thing that I had mentioned in the past on these splitters and refis, especially a splitter, that we can do some background checking if we want to. Yeah,
On who it's going to?
yeah, that was another issue with the ShopRite. Do we, we may not have, but I think that we should, we should be able to do a background check on, if an IDA application comes in, even that, if we generally, like, we knew who Bert Crane was, we were very happy with them.
But that's still the connection to the planning board. So while I've been very careful not to expand my role, like to do it right, I know exactly what we need to do, but in a case like that, we would have known this project from Columbia, let's say, is coming through planning. They're going to be looking for a splitter to split off that tax parcel for the new development. What is it? What has been the secret review? Who is it? You know what I mean? So that's the connection. We don't have to invent the wheel. We just need to go to the planning board and say, can we see what you have? But that's the right way to do it.
So I feel like this morning, we don't have enough information to put forth a plan on how to handle the interim fees. I do feel, with your approval, Mr. Chair, that the inducement fee can come before the board in a week. Can we get some information for the board members to start thinking about in time for next week to say, these are the interim transactions we experience and what we know about them? And then at a later meeting, review a proposed policy to handle those and accept it.
Because I'll call Joe too. He's gonna know off the top of his head, you know.
Mhm.
Okay.
But, Dick, this is why I'm so happy to hand off the chair of the Finance Committee to you. What you're talking about in terms of knowing if there are new partners coming in, are getting a better sense of who they are, I think that is important. And that should remain on the table.
Mhm.
Okay. So what I'll do for next week is kind of put a schedule in writing and, I'll talk to Joe too. And so we'll at least have something to look at and comment on. And then, once we have the final, we'll put it in the policy and review and amend the policy at a later date.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that good?
That's good for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. With people gathering in the hallways, I think there's a standing meeting at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
I guess well, we'll table whatever else we have.
Yeah, I think we're good. We got through all of it.
So,
So, yeah, just a motion to adjourn and then,
So moved.
we're good. Okay.
Adjourning the Finance
Thank
Committee.
you.
10:20.
Victor, thank
And,
you so much for
No
staying.
problem.
You guys get extra credit for an extended meeting?
Do you still use books from Little Brown and Company, the red